Every Christian says they have faith. But if we're honest, many of us are praying for mountains to move while living like nothing is going to happen. We're asking God to do the impossible while secretly expecting disappointment. And that's where many believers get stuck, because faith isn't simply believing that God can do something, but faith is living like He will. And Jesus said something that should shake every believer. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 20, Jesus says, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Think about that. Jesus didn't say, "If you're lucky," or "if you're talented," or "if you've been a Christian long enough." But He said, if you have faith, real faith, not pretend faith, not Sunday faith, but a living faith. So if mountains aren't moving, maybe the problem isn't God's power, but maybe it's our understanding of faith. Faith isn't wishful thinking. Many people confuse hope with faith. Hope says, "I wish God would help," but faith says, "I know He is faithful." Hope waits to see, but faith moves before it sees. That's why Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. Notice something. Faith exists before the miracle, before the healing, before the breakthrough, before the answer. Faith believes before the evidence arrives. Because the world says, "I'll believe it when I see it." But the kingdom says, "I'll see it because I believed." And that's a completely different way of living. David saw victory before anyone else. Imagine standing in Israel's camp, and there's a giant nearly 10 feet tall and is mocking God's people. Every trained soldier is terrified, and every warrior sees defeat. And then a shepherd boy comes in, David. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the oldest, and he didn't even have armor. But he had something nobody else possessed. He had faith. Everyone saw the size of Goliath, but David saw God's greatness. Listen to what David says in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45. He says, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." Notice David didn't say, "I hope this works," but he declared victory before he picked up the stone. And that's faith. But his confidence wasn't in himself, but it was in the God he knew. Because David remembered every lion, every bear, every past victory. Because yesterday's faithfulness gave him confidence for today's battle. Because faith remembers what fear forgets. Fear forgets every time God has carried you. But faith remembers every single one. And maybe that's what you need today. You need to stop staring at your Goliath and start remembering your God. Elijah expected fire. Now think about Elijah. Hundreds of false prophets, and there was one man standing for God. Humanly speaking, he had no chance to win. Yet Elijah calmly rebuilt the altar. He poured water over the sacrifice, and then he prayed. Not a long emotional speech, but a simple prayer. And then he expected God to answer. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 38, it says, "Then the fire of the Lord fell." And so fire didn't fall because Elijah was impressive, but it fell because God responds to genuine faith, that seeks his glory. Elijah wasn't trying to make himself famous, but he wanted everyone to know who God truly was. And sometimes we're asking God to move without actually trusting him enough to stand publicly for him. But faith often requires obedience before the miracle. No ark, no salvation from the flood, no step into the Jordan, no parted river, no prayer, no fire, no sling, no defeated giant. Faith always produces action. Here's something that many Christians miss. Faith is invisible until it becomes obedience. In James chapter 2, verse 17, James writes, "Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." That verse is uncomfortable because it forces us to ask, if I truly believe God, what in my life actually proves it? Do I pray like I believe? Do I obey when it's difficult? Do I forgive? Do I trust him financially? And do I step towards the calling he has placed on my life? Because real faith changes behavior. Noah spent years building an ark before a single drop of rain. Abraham left everything before knowing where he was going. Peter stepped out of the boat before walking on water. So the truth is, real faith always moves first. Not because it sees the miracle, but because it trusts the one who performs miracles. And so faith isn't measured by what you say, but it's revealed by what you do. Your mountain can still move. Maybe today your mountain is anxiety. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's lust. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's depression. Maybe it's a relationship that's falling apart. Maybe it's a dream you've almost given up on. But hear this. The same God who strengthened David, the same God who answered Elijah, the same God who raised Jesus from the dead, he has not changed. And so your circumstances have changed, culture has changed, but God hasn't. Your mountain may be bigger than your strength, but it will never be bigger than his power. So stop speaking more about the mountain than you do about the God who created mountains. Choose faith. Walk in obedience. Trust him even when you can't see the outcome. Because miracles rarely begin when circumstances change, but they begin when faith does. And remember this, mountains don't move because you have great strength, but mountains move because you have faith in a great God. So men of God, keep growing, keep striving, and never give up on the Lord.